Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. That's great. Okay, let's get going. Welcome to our session, Getting the Balance Right. My name is Albert Shum. I lead the OSG design team, and it's an honor to be part of this experience at Build, to share some of our work. But more importantly, it's also for me and the team to learn more about what you're working on. So with that, let's get started and kind of talk more about design. And with Bill and Windows 10, and hopefully you saw that little clip here, we've actually done a lot of design work over the years. I think Windows, again, I said it's humbling. It's an experience that's been evolving for over 30 years. And to be part of that journey, to be part of that experience, it's really exciting. But it's also, for me, and the team, there's been a lot of learning, and I want to share some of that today. So our team, what's interesting about it is it's not just a team of designers. We have design developers, we have design PM, we have front-end coders, we have researchers, and we're all working together to create Windows, the product, but also we brought in Xbox, we brought in services, we brought in teams working on things like IoT, and then we had a team that was in a small building away from the rest of the group working on HoloLens for the last couple of years. And to be able to bring all that together in an environment about sharing and learning to make Windows great, I think that's what's been so exciting. And we work, like I said, in an open environment where, one, it's about sharing and learning, like I said, but also I think this is an important part about how we're building Windows, being the openness, being able to take in new ideas. I think that's another key part of Windows that I've really enjoyed being part of for last year. And we work with teams across Microsoft in Office, in Bing, in Skype, Outlook, OneDrive, OneNote, all working together to bring that work into a cohesive and I would say hopefully a refreshing and new experience to you, but also to allow you to build on top of that. So that's the important part. And then the other part I want to talk more about, I think this is really the themes about getting the balance right. We're here in San Francisco, a beautiful city, and you saw this morning's talk by Satya, Terry, Scott, Joe, Alex. It's, at least to me as a designer, I see this theme that's kind of occurring with all the work we're doing in terms of Windows. It is about building bridges. How do you connect all these experiences that we've been working on, the experiences between a PC and a phone, to create that continuum that spans your experiences, making sure that the things that we create, that we design, allows you to be mobile and not about the device. And I think that's what's so exciting. At the same time, if you know anything about building bridges, they're hard. They take a lot of work, and to get across that big ocean, to get across that turbulent waters, someone's got to go forward and go across first. And sometimes I feel like that's our team. We're designing apps, we're trying new things. Sometimes it gets across the stream, sometimes it doesn't. But what I want to make sure is we're constantly trying to build that bridge, to connect it all, and that's more important. And hopefully today I'll share more about some of those things that we've created that bridge to. The other part about actually the Golden Gate Bridge itself, if you're familiar with Golden Gate Bridge, it's a suspension bridge. It's a bridge that's built on tension. It's really, these cables are hanging it together, and there's this tension in the system. And I'm going to talk more about some of that tension, that when you're trying to create something that spans all these products, how do you create that balance? And there'll be a tension between what's right on a PC, what's right on a phone, and bridge that. And it's a delicate balance. And some things that we're still iterating on, but I want to rest assured that we're going to do it together, and we're going to take that learning and let you also apply it to your apps, to the things that you're creating. So that's a really important kind of theme to take note of. And in terms of the journey that we've been on, it is something that I think, especially if you're familiar, and this is a design session, 5 years ago when we started the journey, kind of re-envision what mobile could be, we were really inspired by the idea of transportation graphics, not just in terms of the visual boldness, but also this clean, I would say, bold information design that really helps you navigate and find the things that you want to do. And we were inspired by great metro systems like London Underground, the Tokyo subway and train system, and of course the work in New York City Metro, where Massimo Vignelli really took identity and information graphics and brought it all together into a rich, coherent information design. I think those are the things that's still true. I think that's still part of our design ethos. It's still part of our design language, and I just want to make sure that that is where we came from and that's who we are still today. The other inspiration in terms of our journey was this idea of using graphic system that really celebrate typography. And some people call this the international typographic style or Swiss design. Müller-Brockmann, the clean use of a grid system to allow you to create that strong hierarchy for information and having that discipline to stick with it. I think that's another part that we really adopted in terms of our design system, and that's still here today. And so that's the foundation that we laid 5 years ago. It seems like a long time. And with that foundation, when we worked on re-envision a phone, we took what we had back then, which was Windows Mobile, and be able to re-envision, like I said, but also I think bring it forward. Bring it forward in the sense of having that clarity, having that purpose. And we did it with some very clear principles, which we still use today. This idea that content should be the thing that you care about, not the Chrome or not the thing that helps you just navigate. It's really about the content. And then making sure it's clean and open, let the content breathe, having space for that. And then celebrating typography, using type in a rich way to help you identify, but also help you navigate. And then I think the part that sometimes gets us, well, it's a good conversation. How do you make things digital? And especially things like there's this lot of overly use of kind of analog icons and things like that. What does it mean in the digital world when the icon itself has no meaning or needs a new meaning? How do you create those designs? So the principles are still with us. We're still using it today with the team. But I would say we've also been evolving. And if you look at where we came from 5 years ago to where we are today, hopefully you see that it's a natural evolution and it's part of our DNA. And we're going to keep with it. And we're going to keep on growing it and evolve it. And the part that was exciting for myself and the team last year, last couple of years, was we didn't just stop at the phone. We had the opportunity to rethink or even re-envision where the desktop could go. And the work that we did to take the desktop forward, I think we learned a lot. We fundamentally saw that there's an opportunity to bring the two together. And with the work that we've shown today with Continuum, that's really the vision of how we're going to bring our designs together. And it's a pretty exciting world. But we didn't stop there. This evolution of our design, it's really, like I said, a part of that journey. What we did in Threshold was also, I would say, pretty audacious. And that's why I say it's humbling. We took our design system and say, hey, let's not stop there. How do we continue to evolve and really think about Windows as the universal platform? Having a universal design system that spans across devices like phone and PC, but even more, even TV experiences or 10-foot experiences or even holographic experiences. Think about that. We didn't just say, hey, let's do an updated design for the phone. We fundamentally want to think about how do we design the whole system for a universal Windows ecosystem. So that was something that we're working on, we're still working on, and we have so much to share. But today I'm just going to give you a glimpse of that, and hopefully we'll share more and more on how we're approaching the universal Windows design. And there'll be a lot more content and tools for you to think about how to create your universal Windows platform app. With that said, the other part was, I think this is the harder part, when you're kind of looking at designing a system, how do you move it forward, but it will still be based on a strong foundation. And we've kind of used this analogy of building a foundation for the city. that you do want different neighborhoods in the city to be vibrant, but it's got to all work together. Those bridges need to connect. Those train tracks need to work with each other. You want to be able to drive from one neighborhood to another. So the foundation for the city needs to be very strong. So we did more work on that. And then having common controls that just works, that makes it easy to develop. I think that was a lot of feedback from folks who were with us for the early phone experiences and Windows experiences. How do we create similar apps or similar designs that we were creating? And I think that's some of the more things we'll be sharing. And then the new thing, I think this is the area that we're still learning, is just creating an adaptive UX that works across those devices. And it's something that, if you're familiar with responsive design, it's something that it takes a lot of work to put theory into practice, and we'll share some of that work in the sessions in the next couple of days. But this idea of adapting your UX and tailoring it to different devices or different contexts, I think that's a really exciting area for us to grow. And then lastly, I think this idea of flighting. I'm going to share more about, wow, how are we flighting and what are we doing? Why are we flighting? And how you could be part of that. So this universal windows. And a year ago, I think Kevin and team and Dave shared this idea of universal apps, and it's even evolving to a larger opportunity where it's not just about the apps themselves, it's about the whole ecosystem. So that we're going to have one store where all these apps can go to, have one SDK, having one set of tools, having one place where you can create experiences that works on all these devices. That is an exciting opportunity. And for us, we really have to rethink about how we design. We couldn't just design, we're just going to make a great phone experience, like I said. But really think about how does that experience flex? And you're going to hear me use a lot of words like flex, adapt, but it is about flexing our system so that your app can work, that our app can work in all these different devices. So there's a lot to learn, and we're still learning. But this is the problem or the opportunity we saw from our design system, and we definitely had a lot to share. And today, I think the team's going to just announce we're going to have a lot of these learnings on our Dev Center that we just launched. So go check that out. So how to create universal Windows platform apps, go check out our Dev Center, and there's a lot of good content there to think about how you could use our system and some of our learnings. And then the other part that, especially on inside the team, sometimes we don't share a lot, and then maybe that's why it's so small. These are the concepts that we went through. We went through, and this is a small sample. We went through hundreds. And we designed, like I said, we didn't just look at the phone. We looked at the PC, we looked at 10-foot. We looked at even different device form factor that didn't even exist. And we did a lot of iterations. We went from mile to while to things that you would say like, wow, that's will never work, to how do we, again, make content be more expressive, more personal, richer, the use of color, strong typography, those principles I mentioned that we've had for the last 5 years, how do we apply them even and push the system, push it to the edge, and get a sense of how our design can move forward. That's the work we did to help kind of build the platform out. And some of it is making it in the product, some of it we'll make it in the product a bit later, but understand this, we're constantly pushing the edge of where our design system can go, and we want you to do that too with us, to tell us where we can take the design system. And then once we did that, the part around common controls, having a consistent set of controls that you can use, I think this is an investment that we fundamentally had made in Windows 10, that we were going to use the exact same tool. We're using XAML for our design. We're using the exact same tools that you're using to design our applications, to design even our system. So that's a big, big investment for us. And you'll see some of that work kind of take place in some of the sample apps that you'll get exposed to, but also in terms of how our first-party apps are evolving, they'll be part of that same common control set. So the things that we learn, we'll put back into the ecosystem that allows you to grow and make your apps better. So that's the part I want to make sure it's clear too. We're not just creating apps because we could do it ourselves, we could do it a different way. We want to do it one way, and one way is together with you. And so that's an exciting part of our design system. So with common controls, I think the other part that we spend a lot of time on, and Carmen and Jeff will talk more about in their session at 5 o'clock, is, wow, it's great, you're doing all these controls, but how do you scale it? Scaling is actually, it's a pretty tough problem. And we've done a lot of work, and we're going to share a lot about how we're actually scaling your UX, your design, so that it can work on a phone, a tablet, and PC, and even other experiences. So we thought a lot about how do you create effective pixels so that makes it easier as a designer or developer to design it so that it looks right on the different devices. And it's something that, if you don't think about it and you just kind of change it onto a different device or put in a different target, sometimes it just doesn't look right. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how do you create effective pixels and our scaling breakpoint. So definitely attend that session later on today at 5 to learn more about how we're doing that, but also how you can do that for your apps so that you can effectively make sure you have the best experience on the devices that you want to target. So that's kind of our scaling effort. And then with that said, we were also iterating internally, how do you take these controls, the scaling, this universal Windows platform, and apply it to different applications, just as you would. And we've been looking at experiences like our media controls. Wouldn't it be great just to have one that you could use if you're creating a media-rich applications and be able to scale that and use it, apply it across all these different devices? So we're actually going to share some of those media control templates. Lynette and Rob will be sharing that, I think, on a session on Friday afternoon. So that's another tool we're going to give you. And again, these are the same tools that we're building internally for our apps that we want to share, but also get feedback on what else we need to do in the system to make sure that our design works across all these different devices. And then the part I talked about flighting, I think I'm going to spend probably the next part of my entire presentation just on flighting and why flighting is so critical. And as all of you are developers and are developing apps either within your company or to consumers, customers, flighting is actually, at least my philosophy is, you have to iterate to make things better. There is no perfect design. I think back to this tension, back to this balance. There's always a sense of like, well, this is the right design, or this is the perfect design. And I just always want to dispel that myth that when you're designing for 1 billion devices, you're really trying to create the appropriate design. Design that works for folks, for different contexts, for different experiences, but also allow you to tailor it. And I think that's what we've been learning, and that's why flighting is so important. When we started flighting with the Windows Insiders, and how many of you are Windows Insiders? Hands up. That's awesome. First of all, I want to thank all you guys, because it's been hard. I know it's been kind of rough, but that's something that we're all used to. And I want to share with you kind of this next slide in terms of how we're doing it, so that you could say like, hey, are you guys just putting things out there for the sake of putting things out there? No, we're really iterating on it. And I think this is a chart, and it's kind of funny for a designer to talk about graphs, but I really, stay with me on this one. So on the right, like I was talking to Gabe, wow, we're doing a lot of work, we're iterating. Like, this is a very different way of designing Windows than we've done before. So if you look at Threshold, Windows 10, the chart on the right kind of gives you a sense of the orange. That's how many days or percentage of our cycle we're actually iterating. When we're flighting something and taking that iteration and then either adjusting our design or updating features. Like, that's proportionally to every other releases. It's almost double. And then in terms of overall days, we're actually much, much more faster. Like I said, the team was looking at Threshold just over a year ago to say, hey, we have this great opportunity to create the universal Windows platform and also move Windows ahead. And we took that spirit and said, let's flight it, let's iterate it, let's take on this promise that we want to make it better with our Insider and contribute your ideas, take your ideas and contribute to making our design, helping it move forward. So the orange part on the left really shows, wow, we're doing much faster, but we're also taking literally the same amount of time in terms of iteration as Windows 8 or even Windows 7. So I just want to hopefully give you that sense that we are taking your feedback, we are iterating on it, we are learning from it, and we are adjusting. And I think that's the great thing about this new design process we have, that we can do that. And like I said, a lot of that is sometimes rough edges, and folks from Seattle, this is what our waterfront looks like right now, although it's going to be beautiful someday. But like we knew that, hey, for a lot of folks, we're going to be giving you a design that's probably not as complete as it could be, that sometimes it's either we're still trying out, sometimes that, hey, the design hasn't been fully implemented, or sometimes we're just trying to learn. And it's going to be rough. And for us inside the company, we're kind of used to that. Like, when we have Bill, like, oh, there's a bug here, or the visual, like, hey, is that the right design? And we're kind of used to that conversation. And I know for insiders, when you're downloading and when you update your machine or your phone, you say, whoa, wait a minute, is this the final product? Well, I think that's the part I think we kind of have to reach that level of understanding where, hey, we want you to get this early because we want your feedback early. And it will be rough. And even internally, we call it dog fooding, which it tastes like dog food sometimes. But I just want to rest assured, we really appreciate your feedback and hopefully you're understanding that you are helping to contribute and make it better. But it will be rough. And the designs I'm going to show you will hopefully show, wow, some of that feedback has really fundamentally helped us evolve our product and make it better, or even added new things. So here's some of that feedback apply in our designs. And I think I want to focus, at least this afternoon, on some of that learning, especially with our phone flight 151, which came out pretty recently. It was pretty rough, and we knew that. But we also, again, want to make sure that you got a chance to contribute and we could iterate with you and try to understand where our design system needs to go, but also hopefully you get a chance to understand where we're going with it so that when you're creating apps, you get to learn from us. So in that sense, there's a couple of areas I'm going to go into, and I'll just dive right in because everyone always wants to talk about this one. It's the hamburger. And I can't believe, the hamburger, what you call the menu icon, last time I got so much interest in my hamburger was like I made this ramen burger recipe last year. And it feels like, wow, what's up with that? Like, what is the hamburger? Why is that? In some ways, I totally understand. I just want to make sure I'm hearing things. I'm not trying to make light of it. And I want that feedback to be really clear that we are listening and we are learning. And the hamburger, if you step back and let's just think about it. Where did it come from? How did this hamburger become such a, in some ways, I would say, ubiquitous control for UX? And if you go to websites, if you're checking out what's happening with Game of Thrones or my Facebook page or even your Bank of America, how has this hamburger pattern, I would say, this control, become so prevalent? I think that really speaks to the timeliness or the need for something, a control that helps you navigate across your app. I think a lot of you are designing apps or creating apps. It's sometimes hard for someone to find where do I go to find another section in your app, another area, or to navigate in a hierarchy when you drill in pretty deep. I think the the hamburger control allows you to give that opportunity to create a global control. That's kind of like the home to your app. Wow, the hamburger. And if you look at the history of where it came from, it's interesting. Back in, I think, 81 Xerox Park, Norm Cox had a similar challenge. He was saying, hey, how do I create a sense of place for my application where I could quickly navigate across my app? And I think that's where it came from, and that was the problem it was solving. And I think it still does a good job of solving that problem. So in some ways, it's not the hamburger that's at fault, I guess. That's the way you want to look at it. It's how it's applied. How do you create an icon, a pattern that allows you to create that sense of place for your app and navigate across your app? And I think we even looked at different designs. Well, maybe it shouldn't be 3 stripes. Maybe it should be something else. But in some ways, it becomes such a familiar icon. I think that's where we landed right now. And again, like I said, I want to give feedback and get feedback from all of you that's actually using this control, which you could actually use in the SDK and try it out. But this is something that, one, we're still learning, but also hopefully in the other examples I'll share with you, that we're evolving how we're using this control. And that evolution has taught us a couple of things. And again, Carmen and Jeff will share some more on that. But the hamburger menu icon, I think there's 4 things that we have to remember when you use it. And we're definitely trying to apply this It's about navigation. It's about giving that sense of place, creating that clear hierarchy so that you can navigate across your application. But also making sure that, hey, you only use the hamburger when it's appropriate. Like for a keyboard and mouse, it's actually really great. You can actually have a slide-out pane that shows all the different areas. But maybe for one-handed use on a mobile phone, maybe the hamburger is not the best control. Maybe the app bar or pivots or even tabs can be a better controls. And how do you adapt, tailor your app for those different devices? I think that's another thing we're applying and learning. And then optimizing the content layout. Like I said, when you have a phone, you have a smaller screen than obviously a PC. How do you take advantage of that and making sure that the content is the most important thing and it's more appropriate to use the hamburger button? When do you do that? And then think about, again, those different input when you're using keyboard versus keyboard and mouse versus touch. How do you make sure the control of the hamburger doesn't get in the way? So that said, that's the hamburger, and we'll be in the design section. There's going to be a lot more conversation, and again, I want to make sure we're listening and getting feedback on how we're applying it, but also I want to show you in some of the apps how we're doing it and how it's evolving. And by far, the #1 app that we got the most feedback, especially in our recent flight, is Outlook. And how many Outlook users here? Hopefully a lot. Great. And you guys, gals, everyone in this room, use Outlook because it's a very productive tool. In email, it's very rich, very dense, a lot of information. But on the phone, you have to take advantage of what's on the phone, but also the constraints of the phone. Typically on our PC app, you're kind of used to Outlook having these 3 areas, having a list of folders, accounts and folders on the left, and then the list of messages in the center, and then the message item itself. Well, on a phone, you can only show one of those, and how do you balance, again, create that tension of, hey, only show what's appropriate as your primary experience. So I think for us, we're still learning how do you take advantage of controls that allows you to flex your app for the device. And I want to show you the latest design, the design that's going to be in the coming builds, where in the earlier flights, you saw an incomplete development of the command bar. And I want to, first of all, give kudos to the Outlook team, because they've been working very hard. A lot of these controls are actually new, and they're building it from scratch. Again, like I said, we're building things from XAML, and we're going to have these controls that allows us to flex and adapt to the different devices. But now you see that, hey, with those 3 panes that we had on Outlook, we can actually create a simple way for you to navigate to less frequently use things like inbox, your folders, but also remain focused on the list of messages that you have. And then when you dive in, you go straight to the message. But also, and I think this is the important part, have an app bar, command bar, that you could quickly access for most frequently used actions. So it's not an instead of. I think there's this like, well, is it a hamburger menu or is it an app bar? It's actually, you could use it in conjunction. And again, flexing our design, giving that flexibility so that you can adapt it for your application, make it more appropriate for the context, but also for the task you want to help your customer achieve. I think that's really important. And showing more of the screens, I think the other feedback we got a lot on was, hey, unify inbox, the ability to multi-select quickly. I think those are the things the team is looking at, and you'll start seeing that in our coming builds, that we will have an app bar that's really quickly accessible, and you can take action quickly on that item. So that's another control that the Outlook team is building and getting into builds, and again, learning how is it working and taking that feedback. And then it's not just the email itself. I think we're taking advantage of Outlook that we're all familiar with. How do you integrate mail with calendar? Which seems like, whoa, hey, that seems like a new idea. But actually, that's how Outlook has always been. Outlook was part of the calendar was part of mail, and they came together. I think with the Universal Windows platform app of Outlook, now we're building that together. The Outlook team is making sure that the calendar is quickly accessible within the email Outlook experience. And then if you want to switch to different views, I think that's the other feedback we want to make sure we address. How do we get to mini calendar? In 10051, you could actually get to that calendar, but you have to actually tap on the calendar date. Now we can actually make that an action on the command bar in the app bar and quickly access that. So those are the things I want to make sure that we're addressing, that we are trying to make sure it is appropriate to different experiences, but also make things easily accessible from one-handed use. So you see it's all located on the bottom of the screen, so it's easy for you to reach with one hand. And then the other couple of apps I want to talk about in terms of the experience we're evolving. I think the people one, we've had people on the phone for a bit, and I think we got a lot of feedback on, hey, why are people round, or why do we use circles? And let me take time to kind of skip away from like the overall design system, but more talk about our thinking. When we set out on Windows 10, one of the key things that we really appreciate about our phone system was people was at the center of your experience. And we want to celebrate that. We want to make sure that's really important. And when you install or when you're looking through an app list, how do you make sure people stand out? And the thing that we want to try out was this idea of using circles to represent people to allow you at least have this visual hierarchy, but also celebrate the fact that these are your people, the people you care about. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to put people in circles. And we're going to try it out again, give us feedback. But I think this helps really in our system to kind of help people stand out from the rest of the design. And then with photos, again, this idea of adapting and learning, I think the adaptive UX is new. So in Photos, the PC app will actually have that familiar photos collection and album where we can make it easy for you to sort and create collections and albums, but also how do you make it easier to navigate? And with the menu icon, the hamburger, I think the keyboard and mouse is pretty effective to navigate. But for phone, what we've shown or tried is that, hey, you could actually take advantage of phone where if you want to use swipe and you want to use the pivot control, we're adapting, we're tailoring that app, that same photo app to have pivot controls. So this hopefully shows you that we are adjusting, we are learning, but we're also applying this idea of adaptive UX into our designs or our apps and sharing that with you. So that kind of shows you that flexibility of system. And then the last one I want to talk about, and this is a work in progress, and Edge, our new browser, it's a contemporary browser. It's got a new graphics engine. It's all about performance. But one of the things we want to make sure it's consistent across all the different screens. And we got really good feedback. Hey, for phone, some folks were used to having the address, the search box in the bottom. How are we adjusting to that? Well, we're still evaluating. We're still learning. But it's something that we're looking at and trying things out. So definitely send us more feedback. But also, I think try it out. Try it out on the new builds and let us know how is it working. So I just want to make sure that we are listening. It's important that we have a system that's consistent, but again, also tailored to different devices. So with that said, I think the road ahead is continue to evolve. Like I've only shown a couple of apps, but we're doing a lot more. We're continuing to evolve. Areas like our task switchers, we're looking at, hey, should the phone be the same as a tablet or a PC? You know, going from left to right, right to left, what's the right way to set up? We're trying to get feedback on that, so send us more feedback on what do you think of that task switching experience. I think the other areas we're continuing to evolve and learn is really around this idea of how do we continue the flight, but also continue to evolve our design not beyond the PC and phone. So things like HoloLens, things like IoT that I get a chance on. Our team is thinking about how do you make universal Windows apps work on all those systems. So we also want to get feedback on that. And definitely, if you get in the line, get try out HoloLens. I think that really speaks to how our design system is evolving even to the future. And those are the things that we're considering and thinking about in terms of making our design better and more flexible and more tailored and more adaptive. And I think with us, we're not just saying, hey, we're going to design Windows all overnight. It's an evolution. And we are continuing to push the design forward. Just a little glimpse, like we are continuing to evolve the desktop. We are thinking about how do you flex the system? How do you use strong colors, typography, design elements? I think this is just a little glimpse that, hey, this is not this is where we're going to go build, but I want to kind of end on we're continuing to evolve our design system in the sense that it's cohesive, it's universal, but also making things more personal and tailored. I think those are the tensions that we want to work with you to kind of help create that right balance. So with that said, there's a lot more to share, and I wish I could go on a bit more. And there's sessions in the next couple of days. There's also a design area that you can get some design support and get feedback and attend some of those theater sessions that we have. And with that, also, I want to give thanks to everyone who's been contributing on Insiders, because it's you that helps us make the great products. And I want to open invitation to continue giving feedback on the flights, but also on the tools that we're going to be handing out at Dev Center. Okay, and that's the presentation section. And we're going to go into a little Q&A. And we're fortunate today to actually have some more folks from our team. Jeff Fong, who leads Windows design. So he's been a key part of our design team. Big hand for Jeff. And then also Karen Kessler, who's our content publishing team. She leads a lot of the content that's on the Dev Center that we've been publishing. She's going to join us for a little Q&A. And also Jonathan Riederman. Him and his team actually designs the store, the Dev Center, and even the upgrade experience. So cool. You guys ready for a little Q&A?
Poor Albert. Anyone?
Questions?
Hi. I just had a quick question. I mean, everything that goes into the core platform goes across all devices. So like, for example, let's say the Outlook was one of your core programs. That goes across the phone, the Windows, the HoloLens, and the Xbox One, which I think is just, I don't know, or is it just ported to like certain ones?
So it's a universal Windows platform app. And so Outlook is built on the same framework, same control set. I think the Outlook team currently is focused on the phone and PC experience. And with HoloLens, you can run universal Windows platform apps. And that's more of something that we're going to iterate and try it out. So, and same with Xbox. It doesn't mean you have to. It's an opportunity you can. So.
Well, and also a lead-on question is like, you know, so when does all this go off onto the Xbox One then too?
Well, the Universal Windows platform, if you go to the session tomorrow, we're going to talk about some of the media controls. So some aspects of the platform will be more readily for Xbox, but there's no announcement on. I just don't want to actually announce we're not going to do email on TV. But I think it's really about the tools and the controls that you can create on Xbox and on phone and PC. Any other questions? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, hi. So how did you collect the data for how people use those different platforms and the type of things that they do on those? You know, because obviously you're going to watch a full-length movie. Well, not obviously, but you might say you're going to watch a full-length movie on your big screen. Maybe you're not going to sit there for an hour on your tablet or your phone. How did you collect that data, or how did you send out surveys or handle that?
You want to talk about some of the user research?
Yeah, so there's a combination of what we have is a user research team that actually goes out and we do usability testing. We go and talk to our customers. So that's one part of how we gather data. The other part of it is looking at the data we're getting through the flights and stuff like that. So it's the combination of those two things and looking at behavior across the different devices that inform us on how we optimize the designs across the different devices.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think this is like a new frontier for us because we spent a lot of time in Windows 10 basically engineering an engagement system and telemetry, and so that we can be asking these sorts of questions as we go forward. So we're learning a lot from that, and it's the new frontier for us.
Hi. One of the things that I'm conscious of looking at the Windows 10 technical previews is the difference between the look and feel of the Win32 apps that still exist and also the new Universal apps that now exist. And I'm just wondering how you see that now. I mean, do you regard the Win32 as kind of a legacy thing that we should really focus on the new style and leave those older apps to look after themselves, as it were, or will there be a design guide for both Win32 and for universal apps, or and how do you see this evolving? I mean, would you expect that Windows, maybe in some future date, the Win32 type of design might almost disappear, or do you expect them to be side by side for the foreseeable future?
That's a good question.
There's different parts. So there's one, the design, and then there's the guidelines. I could talk a little bit about some of the design things we're doing right now with Windows. I mean, it is a challenge to think about all the legacy stuff that we have within all the Win32 apps and the legacy code there. At the same time, we're looking at maybe some lightweight things we could do to help kind of bring the two worlds together, looking at some of the common controls and potentially restyling some of those controls that we bring at least a little more harmony across the new universal space as well as the Win32 space. So we're looking at some lightweight things we could do to kind of bring some of those things together. As far as guidelines are concerned.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you raised it. You'll see that what we did today, if you look at the Dev Center, and we have design guidance that we've just published today, and we're certainly optimizing for what we're doing right now around the Universal Windows platform. And so taking that and then understanding where we need to tailor our own content and our presentation to all of you to think about where are those places where the lines start to blur, and how might you think about what we've had in the past, whether it makes sense to bring it forward. And that's an evolution that we need to continue to do with our design guidance as well. So we'll be doing that, so I'm glad you asked that question.
I'll just add one thing, which I think input is a really interesting part of that question, which is, and I think we've all been on the Windows team since Windows 7 at least. So Windows 7 and Classic Desktop is awesome for mouse and keyboard, right? It's fantastic, and that design works for that. And then the pendulum sort of swung arguably a little too far towards the touch spectrum in Windows 8. And I think where we're ending back now is like this really nice balance where Windows 10 is great for touch and mouse and keyboard. And so the design you'll see coming out, Microsoft is trying to get the sweet spot.
Thank you.
Previously, you mentioned about effective pixels. I was wondering if the APIs for effective pixels are available to all types of Windows apps, or is it just newer style Windows apps, specifically WinJS apps? And you mentioned a session that was going to cover that. Could you remind us what session that is?
Yeah, so that's actually Jeff and Carmen's section at 5 o'clock.
Yep, and then the theater session, there's a theater session on effective pixels happening today, tomorrow, and Friday.
Yeah. So, and the question is it just for Universal Windows platform? Yes, I believe so, yes.
So WinJS apps are included? Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
Thank you.
Hi. What's been the, when you've done your user research, what have been the most effective instruments that you found for that? In terms of Windows 10? For the user feedback in terms of bringing that all together? Is it focus groups? Is it A/B testing? What's been the best thing that you've found so far?
That's a very broad. We do everything. So
right.
And I think with 2-3 million insiders, that's also a very effective set of feedback that we get. Okay. But I think more importantly, I think one of the things that we try to do, at least even early on in design, is really understand what is the scenario. How do you actually maybe that's something we could share more about in terms of our design process. Understanding what are the tasks you're trying to achieve, but really figure out the context and the scenarios. So we actually do storyboards, we do mock-up, and back to this theme of iterations. The quicker you could do a mock-up, the quicker you could do something in code even. That's why we have front-end developers. The quicker you could get this in front of real actual users, either in the lab or in the field or in a flight, the better. So one of the things that I think that's so exciting about the way we've been designing Windows 10 is that ability to get it out there, get our designs out there. So my encouragement is like, it's not about research as opposed to getting your design out there and getting feedback and learning and just applying this iterative nature of design to your process.
Gotcha. As a follow-up question real quick, what's been the most surprising thing that you found during your research on this for Windows 10?
Surprising.
One. Just one?
Wow. That's a,
Well, there's back to you. There's I wouldn't call them surprises as opposed to like anything like there's
Or unexpected, maybe.
Yeah, unexpected, or there's this tension. Like some of the things we mentioned, we kind of like, hey, let's try it out. And sometimes I came across as being like, hey, are you just doing this? And I think that's, as a designer, I always want to, as a design team, like when we try things out, it's a spirit of trying to make a product better. It's not in the spirit of like, well, we're just going to do it. I think that's a new thing. So any design that you see, our intent is always trying to, how do we make the experience better for the customer, easier to create, or just make it more cohesive? And I think that's the intent. Sometimes that gets missed, maybe.
Yeah.
And or maybe we didn't do a good job of communicating the intent.
Yeah. So one of the favorite things I like to do too is, working with our user research team, we get the opportunity to actually go out and visit our customers and see, over time how they use Windows and in fact Threshold, over the last couple of months. So that's been a great program for us, like in partnership with the research team, is to actually, go visit the people who's been using Threshold, get kind of initial, sense of what it was like when they first started using it, and then over a course of 2 months, we go back and visit them. And there's something just really great about just actually going in and visiting our customers, our users, and their homes and their workplaces, and really seeing how they use the product.
I'll just add one. To me, I think, and maybe this is a sort of a collective surprise that we've all experienced over the last couple of years, is like the surprised at how enduring that desktop design is, and the start menu and the taskbar and the jump list and all that stuff is so solid and so powerful. And I think in Windows 8 what we saw was like a fairly major backlash about like, hey, we want that stuff back. And so it's coming back in Windows 10, but it's not just going to be the way it was. It's going to be coming back in that better way that we're trying to evolve. So it's great for mouse and keyboard and touch. Great.
Hi. One of my questions was answered by the technical guidelines that you have uploaded today, but I wanted to know how exhaustive that was, and if it's something that is work in progress or it's locked down. I want to draw a comparison to the Google Material Design Guidelines, and they are very specific, and they're not changing right now. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. Are there do's and don'ts in the same way? Because we want to have our design cross-platform, but also very specific to Windows at the same time.
Boy, I'll start with that one. I think we've let go of the idea of being locked down on a lot of things these days. We certainly motivate our schedule and our processes towards certain points in time in which certain stability matters, but definitely the content and what we're doing as far as the guidance goes is just starting today with what we're sharing, and we will be evolving that. As far as what we see in material versus what we have out there today, think of what we're doing today as sort of you're further down in the weeds, you're further down in the details of what you need to think about as you're trying to design and implement the things that you're seeing us show you this weekend. And we're on that journey towards popping that up and giving more expression to some of the thinking and philosophy around it and some of the things that Albert's been telling you today.
Yeah, and actually I want to emphasize this point. There's this tension part, and it's something that, at least actually in the design team, we struggle with, that you could be very prescriptive and say, like, do this and don't do this, and then not be very prescriptive and just say, like, well, we did it this way, you guys should try it out. And I think we're trying to find that right balance. We're like things like, hey, the app bar, it has to be there. The back button, if you're going to draw it on a touch device, it has to be there. I think we're learning what has to be in the system, what must be, and we're going to be more explicit on things like that allows your app to work across the ecosystem more efficiently, more cohesively. But we're also trying to have that flexibility where you can tailor. And just as I've shown in Photos and Outlook, the team is learning where is that balance, where should it be. There's this one way that makes it easy for everyone to do it, to what's appropriate and what's tailored for that device or for that experience. So that's the part we're going to be updating, adjusting, and learning by all of you, helping us contribute to our design guidelines. So,
One more quick comment. Like I think two great next steps for to address that would be like go to Jeff and Carmen's session at 5 because they're going to get into some much more specifics, and then go to dev.windows.com, which just got launched today. It's our awesome new streamlined and consolidated developer center, and you will see design guidelines there that, like these guys are saying, we'll be constantly evolving those. But there's a lot there right now.
Please.
Tom Warren with The Verge. I noticed that you've obviously got a lot of feedback about the hamburger menus, but I noticed you didn't really necessarily address how you were going to sort of fix some of the concerns. I think the biggest concern from people who've used Windows Phone over the years is perhaps that the hamburger menus are obviously in the top left of the UI, and there's the same sort of concern with the browser and the address bar. I was just wondering if you were going to add in a control that's like similar to iOS, where I can swipe from the edge and access that hamburger menu and not have to type in the top left of my phone or the top right. Just wondering if you're thinking about that to address some of the concerns.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No, we're definitely hearing the concerns. I think, one thing is to, understand like, hey, the stuff that we had before Windows Phone, the pivots and all those controls, they still exist. And the hamburger is really just another, tool and that you can use to design your apps. And our intent was just that when we think about it is the hamburger is like a great tool for people to kind of navigate large sections of an application, which is probably more of a seldom performed task than being deep within a section of an application. As far as the gesture to pull open the hamburger, we thought about that. It's not being considered right now, mainly because a hamburger and a pivot can exist together. So we still want to maintain that flexibility of being able to just swipe left and right really quickly to switch views within a part of an application, and that would conflict with that ability as well. But anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, nothing. I think with Carmen and Suman mentioned Carmen and Jeff's session later today. I think that's the guidance we're going to give more specifically, like the example I've shown with Outlook, how they're looking to balance infrequently used actions with the hamburger menu icon with the command bar and the app bar. That's where your most frequently used tasks are. So I want to make sure it's not hamburger or nothing. I think it's how do you actually create a system that creates that right balance and appropriate and tailored for the different devices. So definitely go to that session later today at 5, and we'll share more. And afterwards, we're here too to talk more and actually learn more. What ideas you have for your app that you want to implement?
And then just one quick follow-up question. With the design of iOS apps, Android apps, and now Windows apps kind of looking the same, should we say? Like the Windows apps that you guys are building as the base apps are very similar to Android equivalents. I'm just curious where you're going from a design perspective and what you can offer that's unique to someone wanting to buy a Windows Phone in future. Because if I bought one 5 years ago, your design philosophy back then was very clear. It was very different, differentiated against the competition. Now it all seems like it's kind of going the same way. So I'm just wondering what you guys are going to do from like a design perspective to differentiate the Windows Phone experience.
Yeah, differentiation is an interesting word. Let's step back. Like when I talked about our journey 5 years ago, I think transportation graphics, Massimo, those, the international typographic style is timeless. That was our inspiration. And in some ways, we want our design to be timeless. We don't want to be like, hey, this year is this style, and then next year we're going to put white walls on your car. Like we want to create a system that will evolve over time, and hopefully we were able to lay that foundation with our design system, and we're going to continue to evolve. And the evolution of that is really about creating experiences that helps you differentiate. I think that's why evolving experiences like Cortana or even Spartan, our new browsers, I think that's, and even HoloLens, you kind of start seeing where our design is evolving to. And those are the things I think we want to make sure that we have our design capability, a system that can actually adapt and flex to all those different experiences. And I think that's why our design's evolving to allow us to make it more universal.
Yeah, I think it's part of our learning process now too, as we kind of think about when we first approached this, this idea of designing universal apps and thinking about how we could create user experiences across different form factors. we started thinking like, hey, how can we actually create one system that works across everything? And over the course of the last year, we're finding like, hey, maybe it makes more sense for us to optimize for certain devices and the experiences so that the experiences really stand out more. So as we kind of start pushing things apart a little bit, I think you'll see a little more expression coming through the designs. But ultimately, our primary goal, kind of back to our inspiration, was kind of helping the user, the customer, really understand what's going on within the system, and really that's what our focus is. Not so much as making a statement, which is important. We want our designs to be beautiful, but also ultimately to make sure that our customers are happy and they know how to use and navigate the system as well.
In the latest versions of the phone version of Windows, we're seeing some changes in how the start screen is being rendered in terms of the spacing between the tiles. Can you talk to that a little bit and how that's going to impact the use of backgrounds on phone? Because it doesn't look like there's very much room in between the tiles any longer for the background to show through. And also from a consistency standpoint, it looks to be kind of different from what you're seeing on the start screen in the desktop builds as well as the smaller tablet builds.
Talk about the grid?
We could talk about it. Yeah. So it might look a little bit different, but it should. The spacing between them, between the phone, the tablet, and desktop. It's working off of the same grid system. It is a very it's actually amazing that the poor designer was working on Start and trying to think about how this this grid system works across all these different devices with different screen sizes and different pixel densities. It was actually quite the complicated problem, but we are creating a similar layouts across all of those things. Regarding the background for the phone, it is tighter between the two areas, but what we have is in the previous phone, we have the background kind of show through the tiles. We'll continue to support that as a way for the background to show through, and we're also looking at transparency so that you can actually look at the background and coming through on the tiles as well.
So the spacing that we're seeing in the latest builds is the final spacing on the Start for phone?
I think it's pretty close. Yeah, I think that's right. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Two more questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, you published first overview of what you're doing with the hamburger icon, and I think that this is very interesting the way I like what you did, because as soon as the screen get bigger, the what is a transient UX became a persistent UX because it's open automatically, from what I understand. I would like to know. Do you plan to do something similar with the tab bar? Because so lots of time you need a persistent UI on phone, but as soon as you get on a tablet or a huge phone, it's not anymore a tab that you would like. You would like those tabs to expand so that they are always, that people don't just see one row, but the 3 or 4 row symmetrically because it's getting bigger. Do you have plans to help us on that side in the future? Because it's a huge issue right now. Because let's say I'm using a tab bar, and this is a very natural user control.
Yeah.
So what is going to be the behavior when I'm getting it on a 27 inches screen? If it's a tab, that means there'll be probably 80% of the space where there's nothing in it because so you need. So sometimes I may want this behavior, but if I could, by programming, say, just morph so that you just give more capabilities to the user.
No, that's a good design challenge. Like, if I understand it, how to actually reflow to multiple tabs based on additional content you might have.
The idea is that I don't want just one tab. Let's show me 3, 4, 5 different tabs. Alive right now, and user depending on where they
based on the and that's something I'm not sure we're exploring, but I think that's a good part of the session we could follow up on.
So there's nothing you're going to discuss over this week about that. It's not something in your right now under the radar. For example, take right now the Facebook app, which use tab. Probably Facebook, if they have like 27 inches, they would want you to see the 4 tabs alive right now, not having you to switch, because it makes sense. So this is the type of issue that I'm facing right now also.
Yeah, our controls support the scalability, but like Carmen says, there's also other things you could do within the toolkit.
Yeah, so the system will provide you breakpoints, or where you can actually listen to the effective pixels and say past a specific breakpoint. You can choose to do other things in your UI, so that you could say like above 1024 effective pixels, let's say, that you want to actually break those tabs out into discrete columns of the UI.
So that means I will have to decide to hide the tab bar and show something else, instead of having a tab bar that morph automatically for me, so less works to do on our side.
That's not something that we have in plan, but it's actually, that's a very interesting concept.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Last question. You've been waiting.
Hi. It seems like all the design issues and constraints are driven in large part by form factors and how do you fit things into different form factors. And so you have small screens and big screens and all of that kind of stuff. And all of those screens have frames around them. I was watching the HoloLens demo this morning, and it occurred to me that in that environment, you don't really have a display device. You don't actually really have a frame. And so that, in my mind, perhaps opens up your design capabilities a lot into something entirely different. You know, that's not necessarily just taking an old application with a rectangular frame and now displaying it on some surface that perhaps is not rectangular. And I was wondering whether you had any thoughts about how you're going to push the design envelope in a technology that involves things like HoloLens.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part. We're still learning, and HoloLens is so new for all of us, even amongst ourselves, that we're constantly experimenting, and the team is literally prototyping every day. And hope, like I said, definitely go try it out. And right now you can run a Universal Windows Platform app on a 2D experience, but that doesn't, like you said, take advantage of a holographic. And how do you actually create holographic apps? I think that's something we're building together. And we got a lot to learn. And how do we flex our design system to support that?
Thank you.
Great. Hey, thank you everyone for staying and for this great session. And please give feedback, send feedback for this session.
We published a blog post today. You should take a look at it, capture some of this thinking. We also have a space down the hall that said, you know, get some consultation around design. So feel free to take advantage of all that stuff.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.